What were those internal mechanisms within Islam that the intelligentsia of Muslim scholars developed to handle dissent, to manage diversity, to identify extremism, and to produce counter-narratives that had the legitimacy of knocking, in other words, more legitimacy in the house of the faithful than the narrative of the extremist. We were also interested not just in tackling extremism, but sometimes mainstream becomes extreme. The mainstream can sometimes become extreme and unjust if time comes for a change in the religious ruling on a topic. Situations have changed. Every scholar will say fatwa changes with the change of context. But if you do not have the qualified people to do the new fatwa, to conduct the ijtihad or juristic reasoning, then an old religious position haunts the present, haunts into the future. Why? Because you do not have the qualified people enough to change and give a more relevant teaching. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, a respected jurist, once said, the whole of Islamic teachings is about benefit for humanity in this world and the hereafter. He says, it's all about justice, compassion, wisdom and goodness. That any teaching, any ruling that is presented by a scholar that moves from justice to injustice, from compassion to cruelty, from wisdom to folly, or from goodness to harm and evil, is a ruling that does not belong to Sharia, even if somebody claims it came from the text or an interpretation. The interpretation cannot be correct if it conflicts with the clear objectives of the text. The problem is, many Muslims are themselves ignorant of this field because it's left for people who are going to be muftis, people who are going to be mujtahids. So most Muslims have not studied this area and have not really taken it seriously. People go online and get fatwas. It's like going to get a prescription from a doctor that has not diagnosed you and doesn't know where you are coming from. Yeah, that's the danger of online sources. But when the people who are getting these, they will get these fatwa, they will spread it, and they will quote the great scholar who gave that fatwa. Does it fit the context? This person doesn't know. All he knows is some great scholar said so. What we find is unqualified micro-mujtahids, online and offline. People talking with religious authority who do not have the authority. They don't understand the importance of context. They don't understand the rules of interpretation, nor are they even aware of when a teaching is off the objectives of the teaching, and therefore they should caution themselves and go ask somebody who knows better. And you can't have censorship. You can't stop people from going online. You can't control that. So the proposal we are making is the promotion of subjects like usulul fiqh and maqasid in the general public. Not to make people mujtahids, but to help them know when they are dealing with somebody who is not a mujtahid, when they know somebody is not qualified. It's like learning enough about health, not to make you capable of becoming a doctor. But if a doctor tells you to take 9 tablets of an antibiotic 6 times a day, you don't need to know medicine to know, wait a minute, let me ask somebody else. In other words, to be able to put the brakes on, that they should be introduced to the minimum amount of literacy in this field. Otherwise, what you have is, when there's an argument in Chad about fixing a minimum age of marriage, you need somebody from Senegal to go and tell them about maslaha. Maslaha is one of the tools, like public interest, is a source or a secondary source of rulings in Islam. You know, there was no minimum age for riding a camel. There's no minimum age legally for holding a weapon in Islam. But maslaha requires that if it's in the interest of the public to put a minimum age for having a driving license in the interest of the public, the state has the right to do so. But it needs scholars who are grounded in usul and these rules of interpretation to say this type of thing. Chad cannot keep calling Senegal to come and help solve their problems. People in Senegal need to be trained. Women need to be trained in basic fields. It doesn't take more than a week's training to know the ABCD. It doesn't make you a mujtahid, but at least you know when you're dealing with somebody who is not qualified. Quick response to a point that my sister raised there about the question of women traveling alone in Islamic jurisprudence. Yes, there is a hadith where the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said a woman should not travel alone without a mahram. But in the rules of interpreting text, you don't take one text in an isolation of other texts. we have another text where some of the companions of the Prophet were complaining about the level of insecurity and oppression and injustice. And the Prophet Muhammad said, by God, if God spares the lives of any one of you, you will witness a time when Islam would spread so far that the land would be safe enough for a woman to travel from Hira in Iraq to Makkah with nothing to fear on the road and without her husband. In another hadith, without her mahram. In another hadith, without anybody else and nothing to fear except the wolves on the way. So based on that, scholars like Ibn Taymiyyah and a number of other scholars, Ibn Hazm, Ibn Hajar, Al-Asqalani, looked at, so what is the main function of a woman has to be accompanied by a man? And they concluded it is about safety. It's about security. Is the passage safe? And that's why in the Maliki, Shafi and the Hanafi school, they had no problem women going to Hajj without anybody else, just in the group of other people. So since the purpose in the eyes of these jurists is about safety and security, then in a context where you can move by car to an airport and it is safe, you can move onto a plane and come elsewhere, it is safe, the issue of traveling alone should not be an issue for us. However, the fact is, it is a common misconception on the ground, and some of these hadith are used to stop women from traveling. But unless women themselves study these fields of the rules of interpretation, know how to counter it, you will continue to be the victim of people's ignorance or biased interpretations that are out of sync with the context of safety and security that you have today. Thank you.